How's it going, everybody? Texas Man here. I hope you guys are all having a great day. Give this video a thumbs up if you guys really enjoy it. Subscribe if you guys haven't already. Also, please do me the biggest favor of all. Hit the bell notification button so you guys don't miss out on future videos or streams here on my channel. I actually uploaded this already earlier here on my channel. Unfortunately, part one, the script that I read, slash the book part that I read, was an older copy, and I didn't realize that before I put the video out. So I apologize. If you guys have watched that video, it is the wrong Stacey Part 1 video. This is the correct one. This is going to be Stacey Part 1 redone. So here you go. This is the cover page. And I also wanted to stress for a fact that that all of my books are fictional. None of the characters' names, none of the locations are real. Now, there might be character names, places, location that exist in real life, and I just use those as names of people. Everything in here is fictional, and it does not represent anybody in the real world or any places in the real world. And so I want to say that in this video because I don't think I've said that in any of my book videos. So I want to state that before we get going through all my other books and videos in the future here on the channel. So if you come across in any of my books, like in RMG, this book, or any of my future books, if there is a character name or a location and you're like, this might seem like me, or this place that I've been to, realize all this is fictional. It's all fake. This is all just for fun. I do not mean to jab at people. I don't mean to make anyone upset, feel uncomfortable, feel like I'm targeting you specifically by name or by a location in any of my books. These are all just fun. It's fictional. And so I want to get that out there especially. So this is going to be part one. I did have the parts marked in here, so this will still align with the beginning of Stacey Part 2 and Part 3. Primarily the beginning part of Part 1. I actually had to alter, and I think it made it a little much, I think it made it better. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoy Part 1 and of course Part 2 and 3 when they do come out. Also, I want to stress that I'm outside right now and it's like 92 degrees outside. So if you guys hear a fan in the background, that's why. And I also have this fly buzzing around me right now, which is really irritating me. So if you see me trying to smack something, that would be it in the video. Hope you guys enjoy. Welcome, guys. This is Stacey, and I'm going to actually skip the introduction because I want to just jump right into the video. To give you guys a basic quick overview, this is going to be about a kid that moves from Dallas, Texas to Roseville, and he ends up meeting the love of his life. Unfortunately, things do not go according to plan. Chapter 1. Summer Camp. A brief time passed from the beautiful Dallas, Texas I was born in to a town in Missouri. Then the travel with my wonderful two parents, David and Deborah, continued, for our destination was Roseville, Michigan. The outdated Toyota slowly sped from the crack of dawn to a dazzling sight of sunset. At times my father would drive far past dusk and into the lengthy twilight. Eventually, though, his time came for us all to enjoy a smooth bed and a soft, fluffy pillow. Daybreak crawled towards our hotel room and crept through the loose windows and the wooden door. We all awoke from the comfort of our beds, and I quickly rushed past the clock, which had just ticked to 8 a.m., and opened the door. My parents followed, and my mother began the early drive. At the time, my dwarfed stomach had not realized its requirements of a substance to keep my unselfish body working. The electronic clock in the car turned to 8:15 a.m., and what shocked me more was the sight of a McDonald's. There's that fly again. Buzzing around me. It's really getting on my nerves. My 15-year-old body exited out of the vehicle, entered the restaurant, and within 10 minutes began to eat a most superb breakfast. The splendid meal consisted of hash browns, sausage biscuits, a cup of fruit, and a medium cup of orange juice. Time moved swiftly onwards after that morning. It seemed to be a decade of my parents and I being on the road to a better place, but in reality it would only be 1 week. During the travel, I overheard my parents talking about my 24-year-old brother, Devin, moving from Spain to the United States for the summer. Eventually, we arrived at our new home. The alien house stood high and seemed heroic in my eyes against any savage weather that was sent our way. My parents opened their car doors and began their short-paced walk to the front door of the house. Abandoned, alienated, and forsaken cuddled my brain and heart of why my parents left me in the gray, four-seated car. I guess I was still connected to my home state and really missed it. My guess is that my parents knew it and were allowing me to relax and realize there was no going back to Dallas, Texas. I undid my filthy seatbelt and opened the door with gloves on my hands because the handles were boiling from the fierce sun rays. Then I stood out of the car and paused. The house to the left was abandoned, and on the right appeared to live a family as well. I walked steadily towards the front of my new house and placed my right hand on the copper handle. "Excuse me," said a jolly voice. I let go of the handle and turned around, starting at noon and then moved to 1 o'clock and continued until I reached 6 o'clock. "Hello," said the girl, now standing in front of me. "Are you moving in?" asked the girl. "Yes," I replied. "Cool, I live right next door to you," said the girl. "It was great to meet you, but I have to go now," I said. "Okay, I understand, but could you deliver this flyer to your parents, please?" said the girl. "Sure thing," I replied. "By the way, my name is Douglas Armstrong," I said. "Stacey Blonde," said the girl. Stacey walked on the lawn and entered her house. I turned around to open the door, but was stopped by my father. "Making friends already, Douglas?" asked my father. "Yes, her name is Stacey Blonde, and she is our neighbor," I said. I opened my hand that contained the flyer Stacey gave to me and handed it to my dad. My dad took it and began to read it to himself. Within 5 seconds, my dad placed the flyer in his shorts pocket and looked at me in the eyes. "Let's get our belongings out of the car and get settled into our new home before we absorb anything else," said my father. I quickly became callous of my father, but knew if I wanted to know what the flyer was about, I would have to wait. Our belongings were few. Most items we gave to the Salvation Army, because of my mom being so terrible, or were sold in the garage sale the week before we left Dallas, Texas. My powerful arms were capable of carrying so much weight that between my dad and I, we had the few items of ours placed in the house in less than 2 hours. My parents took the room the farthest from the kitchen, and I took the one located across from one of the 2 entrances to the bathroom. I sat down on the wood floor of my room and wondered about 3 things. What were my parents going to do? What was going to happen with the 3rd and unused room in the house? And what was the reason I couldn't stop thinking about Stacey with her blonde hair and blue eyes? My young mind could not answer them. A faint sound and a thunderous thump blasted from the kitchen. I stood up off of the floor and walked down the prickly carpet hallway and turned right. There, my pleasant mother stood with the house phone placed by her right ear. My father entered the kitchen and waited for my mom to finish the call. My mom removed the black-colored phone from her ear and pressed a finger down on the end button. "You begin in 4 days," said my mom. "What time?" asked my dad, entering the room. 8:30 a.m. is when you'll need to arrive at 2 p.m., replied my mom. My dad turned towards me and began to explain everything. My father informed me he was leaving for a lengthy period of time to work for a semi-truck company called Westside, and that Devin was coming to live with us because the economy in Spain was failing. I wondered if the move centered around one main thing: money. I asked my parents when my brother was arriving and what the game plan was until the beginning of my freshman year. "Your brother will be arriving sometime tonight," said my mom. "Also, in 4 days, you'll be leaving for a 3-day summer camp with the local high school," said my dad. I was becoming repulsive towards my parents. First day at my new house, in a new state, in a new city, and I was already being told of upcoming events. My parents saw my emotions on my face and felt awful for all this information being downloaded on a 15-year-old, but it was necessary. I attempted to take the flyer Stacey told me to give to my parents, but my father disregarded the object and locked it away in his personal safe. My parents began the construction of our new home, and with periodic breaks, the time came for us to declare our work completed for the day, but more awaited tomorrow. Bang and buzz filled the upstairs of the house at midnight. Noisy greetings followed, and soon after a faint crash was heard coming towards the doorway to my room. I completely peeled open my eyes to see a 24-year-old man standing by my bedside. It was my brother, Devon. I said hello to Devon and closed my eyes to prepare for the next day. During my dreams, I wondered for some reason about Stacey and if she would be attending the summer camp. Daybreak arrived the next day, and the completion of the upstairs and the basement continued. The evening arrived and we were finally done. For the rest of the day I played cards and video games with my brother. Centuries seemed to pass for the next 2 days, and on the next morning of a clean sunrise, my father dropped me off at Roseville High School for my 3-day-long summer camping trip. My dad tossed me a brand new cell phone to use in case of an emergency. I wondered when I was going to see my father, and the next time I would hear of his location, it would be too late to say a million things left in my heart known as secrets. My father drove away, and I boarded the old-fashioned yellow school bus, while my dad returned home and took a local bus to Westside headquarters in Lansing. I began to meet new people on the bus. I sat with 3 guys that were freshmen and the school bully. Rosh Holmes, Philip Abbey, and Zach Zettel quickly warmed to my gentle heart, but Jack Lightbody, the school bully, attempted to make my life miserable. Luckily, Jack's strategy never worked on the way to Port Huron, the city the camp was located in, because of not only my Christian faith, but of Rosh's, Philip's, and Zach's also. During the 1-hour trip, I learned that Rosh had no parents alive, and instead was living with his uncle. Philip played the trumpet in the school's band, and Zach had heart problems. "Hey Douglas, have you met Stacey Blonde?" asked Philip. "Yes, she is my neighbor," I replied. "Did you know she is a freshman and is on this bus?" asked Philip. "Really?" I asked. "Yes, she's sitting behind you," said Philip. I slowly turned to see a dazzling and beautiful face, bright blue eyes, and blonde hair like gold. The reason I couldn't see her when I boarded the bus was because she was hidden under a soft blanket. Eons appeared the time span until we reached the entrance to the camp. Time and time again I wondered about what would occur during the next 3 days. The school bus was put to a halt and the door opened. A dynamically mighty man boarded the bus and began the usual list of rules to follow while on the campgrounds. His voice was smooth when he spoke, but he appeared somewhat intolerant of obnoxious young people. All that mattered, to the most of us, was when the meals were going to be served and what activities we would do. Reason being was I had no plan of wasting my time and my parents' money to relax by the beach to tan. I planned to enjoy it by getting to learn about more of my 3 new friends, and also about Stacey. From sunrise to sunset, the freshmen enjoyed the 3 days. Dawn began the pancake, egg, sausage, and milk breakfast. Noonday was cheeseburger or hot dog with a can of soda. I chose Mountain Dew daily, as well as my friends, especially Philip. Dusk brought out of the oven mac and cheese, chicken fingers, or a dozen tacos with a Caesar salad. Activities ranged from the common cross the finish line first race to the best stage performance and to putt-putt golf. All in all, the $100 my parents paid was adequate to the fun I had. On the ride back home, the 5 freshmen formed a gang-like group called the Stars. Philip, Rosh, Zach, Stacey, and I were a star in this group, and we had many adventures coming towards us that were better than a summer camp. Chapter 2. The First Date. Caution surrounded me. An abundant amount of weather of the sun, and not of the human sort, was present. A reliable breeze was coming from the west. One thoughtful ice cream truck pulled around through the city, being friendly to those who missed out. While away at a summer camp, or at Cedar Point, 7-Eleven is still plentiful of strawberry ice cream bars, cold sodas, and frozen pop. Generous citizens were cutting each other's lawns free of charge, and 4 charming freshman boys were walking to Roseville High School. Stacey slept in, and so her frantic mother drove her to school in a red Ford pickup truck. The ability to walk with Rosh, Philip, and Zach was only possible because of one reason. My three and then can't talk. My 3 friends lived across the street from me. It had been 1 month since the summer camp, and now it would be 4 months until winter break. The school day seemed brief. I wondered if the fact that it was a half a day had any impact on the time in the voluminous structure. The stars moaned and groaned about the location of their classrooms, their miniature-sized lockers, the traffic flow of peppery teenagers, the greasy hallways, and the high-pitched squeaks that would be coming from the band room. While walking home, a screech could be heard a few blocks away from our current position. The smell of ripped rubber filled the atmosphere, and another squeal was heard. The stars ran around a corner to see a car chasing through the neighborhood. A sound, faint at first, then harsh, filled our ears. It was 5 police cars chasing a criminal. It was an outstanding car battle while it lasted between the heroic police and the combative criminal. Eventually, the aggressive side of the man caused a severe crash into a tree. The police officers forcefully arrested the man and was taken to prison. The stars continued onwards, fearless that the criminal would escape the police and become belligerent towards us all. Sad but true, the time came for Rosh, Philip, and Zach to split from the group and eagerly finish their chores. Stacey and I watched as our friends vanished into their homes while we continued the slow but steady pace to our own homes. Stacey and I were now standing in Stacey's driveway. Stacey, I thought, I'd like to take you to the last showing of the Texas Rodeo this Friday night at 5 o'clock, I said anxiously. Yes, Douglas, I would enjoy that very much, replied Stacey. I began to blush for a moment, but quickly returned to my normal facial expression. Stacey walked away and entered her house. I could see a Ford pickup truck coming down the street with a sticker that read, "Sarah and Teddy Blonde are coming towards you." At first I thought it to be an amusing object, but then my eerie mind realized it was Stacey's parents. I didn't waste time Tuesday, nor for the next 3 days. The times were changing from that of boiling sunburns on Philip to the cool breeze that made Stacey's blonde hair fly through the sky. The evening rolled through Friday, and the clock in my house ticked to 5 p.m. I already informed my parents of the event that was taking place, and reasoned, mostly with my mom, that it wasn't anything more than 2 people going to a rodeo. Periodically, my father warned me about what girls wanted at that age and what they would do to get it. My father was more understanding when I told him that I had no crush on Stacey. Besides, if I did, what would happen since she lived right next to me between the parents? Speedy shoes and my father telling me to have a good time forced my timid body out of the house and in front of the blonde's front door. I heard faint voices and pounded easily on the wood door. Response came in 10 seconds, with Stacey greeting me. I could hear Stacey's mother whining about the fact that she couldn't come, and her father groaning about her going somewhere during the first week back at school. I take it you didn't tell your parents where you're going and who's going to be around you, I said. My parents don't care as long as I'm with someone to protect me, answered Stacey. I escorted Stacey to my parents' car, which I was driving, placed the keys in the ignition, and began the lengthy drive to the Texas Rodeo in Royal Oak. The time turned from the swift evening to the long dusk. I amused Stacey by singing along the songs on the radio, and she even joined in with me until we arrived in the parking lot, of which was well stocked with vehicles. Admired by the cost I was going to pay for the parking ticket, Stacey offered to pay half of the $100 to park and enter. I realized Stacey was devoted to helping both me and her to having a good time. Why? I asked, with Stacey handing me a $50 bill. God would pay half of this cost. I mean, you shouldn't have to pay for your own part of the fun, said Stacey. Yes, but it is a guy's duty to do the paying, I replied. That's true, but that's how the world works, said Stacey. This trip to a rodeo was becoming more of a date. I took the cash from Stacey and gave it to the man in the booth, parked the car, and walked side by side with Stacey. The show began at 5:45 p.m. and ended at 9:30 p.m., is what a sign read before we took our seats. However, Stacey, for some frantic reason, asked me to take her home. The time was only 6:15 p.m. It upset me because I paid $50 for 30 minutes of an unfinished show. On the other hand, I was concerned that something I did made Stacey insecure and repulsive about me and the evening. For the next 40 minutes, the sound of the car's engine was the only boom. I didn't turn on the radio or speak to Stacey, but she spoke 3 words when I pulled into my driveway and took the keys out of the ignition. "I'm sorry," said Stacey in a mute voice. Stacey bolted out of the car and walked towards her father, which was sitting on a red lawn chair, and began to unscrew a small white bottle. I slowly approached Mr. Blonde, wondering what the situation was between Stacey and me. "My daughter forgot to take her medicine, and she realized it in time before it was too late," said Mr. Blonde. "Mr. Blonde, what is, wrong with her?" I asked. "She has a severe cold, and she has to take this medicine, or she could worsen her symptoms," said Mr. Blonde. I was about to ask Stacey's father what her symptoms were, but was unable to because my father interrupted. Irritated that my somewhat date with Stacey was run down, I said goodbye to Mr. Blonde and Stacey, entered my house, and thought long and hard about Stacey and her symptoms. My father returned to the house and understood the situation completely. During the remainder of the weekend, I enjoyed playing around with my dad before he left to continue his semi-truck driving job, and my brother before he moved to Ohio to work for Cedar Point. I couldn't stop thinking about Stacey, and the reason why remains a mystery. All I know is that my first date was short, and that Stacey Blonde has a severe problem. Chapter 3. The Cliff's House. A year passed after my weird evening with Stacey. The stars were still together, and we were now all sophomores. Jack Lightbody was still the school bully and was capable of failing his classes, but was clever in the ability to change his grades. What Jack did was never talked about in front of the creepy teachers, the cranky principal, or the tense police officer that patrolled the school. Time and time again, Jack would make a grim story about someone going somewhere for some reason to do something, and of course was never seen again. It was midday during a Tuesday. Weather was average for November, and though the temperature was cooling down, Jack's inconsiderate lips began to bring warm cuss words to the teacher, but did so hush-like that Philip and I were the only boys that could hear him, since we sat around him. I figured out after my history class ended that the teacher had super hearing because she asked me what I heard, and both were identical. While Philip and I began to walk towards the rest of the stars, Jack came up to us. Jack began to ask us if we wanted to visit the house that stood on a cliff to explore for hidden treasure. "Jack, come on, man. You know there's no gold in that house. Besides, people live there," I said. "Not anymore. I heard that they were moving out and leaving behind everything. And I mean everything," said Jack. 6 o'clock tonight. My house. I'll drive," I said. Jack pulled Philip out of the way, still acting as the school bully. Philip knew that for someone to be like that meant their heart had to be hurt, but not by weapons, but by influential, intense, and effective words of panic, unease, and danger. We, the stars, knew that the way children and adults expressed their belligerent heart was through violence or bullying. We all hoped that one day us stars would be able to shine bright enough to change his heart to be tamed and be used by God. Time passed rather slowly that day. Rosh, Zach, and Stacey wanted to come, but I knew that if Jack tried to harm Phil or me, that we would kick his butt. Jack arrived in a red and white striped car, and within 2 minutes the 3 of us guys were off to explore the Cliff's house. The daylight that once was surrounding us was taken away and was replaced by a sunset. I took the keys from the ignition and placed them into my blue jeans, left front pocket. I told Jack that if he became obstinate towards Phil or I, we would leave. My hope was to scare him because the house was located 1 hour away from any city. Once Jack and Philip exited out of the car, I secured it by locking the doors. We stood in front of the car and looked towards the mansion, towering at least 3 stories high. I became receptive towards Philip when he pulled out 3 flashlights, but optimistic towards Jack when he pulled out a handgun. Jack attempted to calm my apprehensive mind, but the fact that a careless 16-year-old boy was holding a loaded gun continued to put me in an uneasy mood. Philip took to the door first, shivering about him being in a vulnerable spot if a monster jumped towards him when he opened the door. Philip grasped the dusty copper handle and opened the door, which was squealing to the touch of the floor. Philip turned on his flashlight and allowed Jack to lead the way through the alienated mansion. Jack turned on his flashlight, as well as mine, too, and entered the empty room. The three of us walked at a slow pace through the room and found nothing of value. Phil and I separated from Jack and moved on to explore the kitchen and the bathroom, while Jack searched the bedrooms. Inside of the kitchen, I found a dog cage. I moved inside of the cage and picked up a rusty name tag. I looked at it and rubbed away the dust to realize a terrible truth. I stepped out of the cage and began to race towards Jack. A bang sound echoed throughout the house. "Stop! Hold your fire," I said to Jack. "I saw an evil creature run fast," said Jack. "It was a dog, Jack," I exclaimed. I saw Jack and Philip, the dog tag, for a brief moment, and within half a second I ran upstairs and saw the dog lying on the ground. Phil and Jack came up behind me and saw a miserable-looking dog. We were all glad that Jack's shot had missed the dog. We realized that the dog was black and brown coloring, soft fluffy hair, and was a delight to play around with people. Jack kept his handgun hidden while I picked up the dog and placed him in the car outside. "I guess the owners were too poor to not only pay their mortgage but for their dog too," said Philip. "I'll be taking care of him now," I said. I looked at the dog tag again and saw it had the word Dieter imprinted on it. So then, that is what I decided to call the dog, Dieter. The three of us guys returned home and prepared for the next week of school. Chapter 4. Doctor's Orders. The trip to summer camp, the first date with Stacey, and the finding of Dieter were all ancient to this April day during Roseville's spring break. The day was Saturday and in midday. The temperature was about 70 degrees, which led me to walk across the street to swim in Philip's pool. The cool water was smooth to the touch for the 2 hours I was there, along with Rosh and Zach. The time came for me to return home and prepare dinner, since my mom was at a friend's house. Luckily, her friend picked her up and left our car home. While I crossed the street to my house, Stacey stepped out of her house and came towards me. Stacey asked me if I could take her to her doctor to get a refill on her medicine for her special symptoms. I agreed to drive Stacey to her doctor, but I needed to change into some dry clothes. I was pleasant and calm on the way to Stacey's doctor. I wanted to ask what was wrong with her still. I mean, she had been so-called ill ever since we met her in 9th grade. Stacey was quite sweet to me. She told me that I made each of her days more superb when she saw me. Worrying about Stacey's condition, I asked her if I could know her symptoms, but the answer was no. I pulled the car into her parking lot and unlocked the door. Stacey strolled out and, looking anxious, entered the building. I was hesitant and annoyed at Stacey for one reason. She said that she needed a refill on her medicine, but she left her medicine bottle on the floor. Something else also made me nervous. The bottle was completely full of pills. I picked up the bottle and read the label. The medicine was for a sickness of some sort. I placed the bottle back on the floor and saw Stacey reading a piece of paper, crying. Stacey entered the car and crumpled the piece of paper into a slot near the door handle. "Do you want to tell me what's wrong?" I asked, driving out of the parking lot and returning home. "No, Douglas," replied Stacey. "Stacey, we're friends, and you can trust me with anything," I said. "The doctor gave me an order," said Stacey. "What is it? Please tell me," I said. "The doctor said that if I don't keep taking these pills that I'll need some expensive surgery, like an x-ray, to locate the source of my cold," said Stacey. I hugged Stacey when at a stop sign and told her that everything would be all right. Eventually, we arrived back at our homes, and Stacey left to tell her parents, which were home, about the piece of paper. Before I left the car, I saw the piece of paper still in the slot by the passenger's handle and took it out. I uncrumpled the rough paper and began to read what the doctor wrote to Stacey. June 24th, 2012 is the deadline, I said out loud, reading the paper. And that's going to do it, guys. We have finished part 1. Thank you, guys. If you guys ended up watching part 1, the first version of it, as you guys can tell, I added and deleted certain things, and this is the correct version. So I do apologize if you guys actually watched part 1 that came out earlier today. I'm sorry for that. And I hope you guys look forward to part 2 coming out very soon. And I'll see you guys in the next video or stream, whether it be here on my YouTube channel at The Texas Man or Twitch at Douglas447. You guys have a great day.